Hi, welcome to your 6-4 flip video. 6-4 is called percents less than 1. So last time we talked about percents greater than 100%. This time we're talking about percents less than 1. So very, very, very small percents. So you're talking about percents like 0.5% or 1/3 of a percent or 0.1 of a percent. So we're looking at very small proportions of the numbers that we're looking at. All right, so percents, just we're going to start off with a brief reminder of what a percent is. So a percent, is it either for every 100 or out of 100? Well, you've noticed that I've probably put these in color-coded means to help you remember. It is not out of 100. It means for every 100. If you say out of 100, you're limiting yourself. You're saying I can only have, 12 out of 100. I can't have -5 out of 100, or I can't have 112 out of 100 because I only have 100 things to work with. So how do I have -12 and how do I have over 100 or 112 out of 100 if I only have 100 things to work with? If you say for every 100, that makes sense. You lost 5 for every 100, -5%. 150%, you have 150 for every 100. So it's a better way of thinking about it, okay? Let's start off. We have to know how to change decimals to percents and percents to decimals. So let's start off with decimals to percent. So if I give you the decimal 0.2, how do you go from that to a percent? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 100, which is the same thing as moving the decimal 2 points to the right. So if I take that 0.2 and I move that decimal 2 to the right, I get 20%. Now, we could also do the opposite and go from a percent to a decimal using the inverse operation. So if I give you 12%, how would you put that as a decimal? Well, you're going to divide by 100, which is the same thing as moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So right now my decimal point is to the right of the 2 in 12, and if I take that and move it 2 to the left, I get 0.12%. So this is you have to know how to do this. Digits assumes you know how to do this, okay? Now, if I give you 0.023%, we're going to use the same rule. So if I give you a percent, how do you go to the decimal? You divide by 100, 2 to the left. So you're going to go ahead and take that 0.023 and take that decimal, move it 2 to the left, and fill in those blank spots with zeros. So 0.023% is 0.00023, and that's just the decimal form. Okay, so the decimal form of 0.023% is 0.00023. All right, we can do the same thing with even smaller percents, 0.00045, same thing, 0.0045%. How do you do that? Well, you're going to take that decimal and you're going to move it 2 to the right. I did not mean a percent here. So if that was just a decimal, 0.0045, and I wanted the percent form, you take that decimal, move it 2 to the right, because it is already a decimal, and you want to go to a percent, so you multiply by 100, so that's 2 to the right, so 0.045%. All right, see, now I put the percent there, so it wouldn't make sense for it to be in both places, okay? So once we have that information, we can move on, okay? So part equals percent times whole. We've worked with this equation a whole lot. What is 0.75% of 200? So first things first, what means we don't know. So we can use that as a blank box or a variable. Is means equals. Now 0.075%, I need to change that to decimal form because you can only work with decimals. So if I take 0.045%, 0.75%, I'm going to take that, I'm going to move my decimal 2 to the left, and I get 0.0075. So 0.75% is equal to 0.0075 as a decimal. Of means multiplication, 200 is just 200. So now I can solve pretty easily. The variable is all the way, what I don't know is by itself on the left-hand side, and I just do 0.0075 times 200, and I'll use P for part equals percent times whole. Part equals 1.5. All right? Here's 3 problems. What is 1/5% of 100? 12 is what percentage of 221? 12 is 0.4% of what number? So the first one, what is, so a box means what, a variable, an unknown. Is means equals. Now we have to be careful here. 1/5%, so we got to do some scratch work. I know 1/5 is equal to 0.2. So 1/5% must be equal to 0.2%. But we just talked about in the last problem that we can't use percentage. We got to put it as decimals. So 0.2% is 0.002. So 1/5% is 0.002. Now of means multiplication, 100 means 100. Just multiply 0.002 times 100 gives me 0.2. All right. Now that was the easiest setup. The other one, your variable is all the way by itself on the left. The harder ones are the ones coming up where the variable is linked to another number. So let's look at that. 12 means 12 equals. What percentage? I don't know the percentage, so I'm going to represent that with a box. Of means multiplication. 221 is just 221. So let's fill in that box with a variable. Let's use y. And then how do you get y by itself? We're going to divide both sides by 221. The 221s next to the y cancel each other out, and you get y is equal to 12 divided by 221, which is 0.0542. But I want to know what percentage. So that's in decimal form, so you got to convert that to a percent now. How do you do that? You move your decimal point 2 to the right, you get 5.42%. Okay? Last one, 12 is 0.4% of what number? So 12 equals, whoop. Well, that was a lot. Let's back up. So 4% is 0.004. I took my decimal point, moved it to the left. I'm going to do multiplication, because of means multiplication. What number? We're going to use a box. Now, how do you get that box by itself? You know, you could put a variable in there if you'd like. Let's say we'll put in x. You know, how do you get x by itself? You can divide both sides by 0.004. Those cancel out. Oh, I guess I put a y in there. Okay. So those 0.004s cancel out, and you get y is equal to 12 divided by 0.004, which is equal to 3,000. So now I'm sure I'm going to get some questions like, why don't I need to put this, why don't I need to change this into a percentage? Well, because it's asking what number. The number isn't a percentage. We only need to do that when we're asked what percentage. Okay? When we're just asked what number, 3,000 is the number. I don't need to change it to a percentage because it's already a number and they don't want a percent. So I already know my percent in this problem. It's 0.4%. The number that 0.4%, 12 is 0.4% of what number? That number is 3,000. I don't need to change it into a percentage. Okay? Last thing I want to cover, this is going to be a short video, is how do you write a percentage as a fraction? So I have an example here, 0.29% as a fraction. So you got to really think about what does having a percent mean. Well, 0.29% means 0.29 over 100. Percent means for every 100. I have 0.29 for every 100. So now we talked about complex fractions. You can't have a decimal inside a fraction. So I'm going to multiply both my numerator and my denominator by 100. And that'll give me 29 over 10,000. Because 100 times 100 is 10,000. 0.29 times 100 is 29. From here, it's just a simplification. Is there any number you can pull out of 29 and 10,000? No. Well, this was a poor example. And you're done. So that would be 0.29% as a fraction is 29 over 10,000. All right, so let's look at a different example. If I gave you 0.34%, I want it as a fraction. Well, 0.34% means 0.34 over 100. I'm going to multiply my numerator and my denominator by 100 to give me 34 over 10,000. What can you pull out of both 34 and 10,000? Well, you can pull a 2 out of both. So if I divide 34 by 2, I get 17. 10,000 divided by 2 is 5,000. Anything you can pull out of both? Nope, so you're done. All right, so I picked easy examples here. You might get something a little bit harder where you need to keep simplifying, and that's not an issue. Just be prepared for that. You know when you're done to simplest terms. It's when you can't pull anything else out. All right, let me know if you have any questions. That concludes everything we have for 6.4%, less than 1%.